Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining me. It's been a very long time since I have started sharing from the scriptures, and I was thinking that I should begin this year. There were many false starts. There were many occasions when I thought that I could begin, but it never got around to actually taking off because of time pressures. But this week, I just decided to send the notification out, put myself in a line, and as a consequence, I would be able to, um, be committed to a session on Mondays and Thursdays. And I was also thinking about a very specific topic. What is a specific topic which would really assist me and would also assist others? And I was thinking that the only topic that I could really focus on would be the chanting of the holy names. Even if we were to talk about the Bhagavad Gita, from the Bhagavad Gita, if we were to talk from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or any scripture, our focus will always be on improving and being able to commit ourselves to offer Srila Prabhupada a better quality of chanting. So I was motivated from within and without, saying that I should work on myself and I should also be able to share. So this would allow others to take advantage of my advantage of whatever is being shared. So that was the purpose of starting with Hari Nama Cintamani. So I think we have a few people and it's already 9 o'clock. I just want to get started. So thank you very much for joining me. So we'll begin now. Om Ajnanatimurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikeshendriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchisade Namaha Namah Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. The last two verses are from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 24, verses 36 and 37. These were shared by me several months back, I think several years back. I found it extraordinarily helpful in being able to focus my mind before chanting the holy names. And as a consequence, I was wanting to share it with others. These are prayers that are addressed to Sri Aniruddha, the specific form of Sri Aniruddha who manifests himself is in the form of Sri Hayagriva, the Lord who appears with the face of a horse. In tradition, he is considered to be the source of all forms of transcendental knowledge. As Aniruddha Amsa, he is also in charge of the aspect of the mind of the Supreme Person. So he is called Hishikesha Indriya Atmane. Indriya are the senses, and the Indriyas are controlled by the Indriyatma, which is the mind. So he is Hishikesha's Indriyatmane. He is the mental principle of the Purusha himself, of the Lord himself. And what I have found is that by chanting these two verses, I tend to chant for a longer period of time than just one repetition. Initially, I was chanting for almost a full hour, and I found it extraordinarily helpful in being able to chant quality rounds. And then I picked it up as a part of daily practice. I offer around half hour of chanting every day to the Lord in these two verses before beginning my sadhana. And I do it sometimes just lying on bed, because even before I even get out of bed, I'm spending around half hour or so meditating on these two verses and surrendering to the verses and begging Lord Aniruddha to help me so that I would be able to wake up with enthusiasm and be able to carry out the day's activities. I would also be able to wake up and chant. So that was the purpose of chanting these prayers. It's again 4th canto, chapter 24, 36, and 37, if anyone is interested. Now, to the topic of the day, the primary topic of the day, as I was mentioning earlier on, is for us to be able to share from Sri Hari Nama Cintamani. Chanting of the holy names is our very fundamental and basic activity. In other words, the whole movement of Lord Chaitanya, the Yuga Dharma, the establishment of organizations surrounding the movement of Lord Chaitanya, the propagation of preaching and books and so on and so forth, everything is centered around facilitating the chanting of the holy names. And Sri Hari Nama Cintamani, very specifically, is a dialogue between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and Sri Haridas Thakur. And one may ask, why didn't Lord Chaitanya speak? What was the necessity for Lord Chaitanya to invoke or bring in Srila Haridas Thakur? Srila Haridas Thakur is the Nama Acarya. We're going to talk a little bit more about Srila Haridas Thakur's position in our line. We're also going to talk a little bit more about his life in the first session, which is today. But why did Lord Chaitanya begin the process of having a dialogue? He chose Sri Haridas Thakur for the holy names. He chose Srila Rupa Goswami to discuss Rasa Tattva. He chose Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to discuss liberation. He chose Srila Ramananda Raya, another very confidential associate, to talk about very intimate and confidential pastimes. He chose different personalities and began a dialogue, and those dialogues went very deep into understanding specific topics which would be of great use and help to the practitioners in future years. But why did he choose people? Why couldn't he have just spoken and shared the nuances and the intricacies and the technicalities of the specific dharma that he himself came to preach? What was the need for him to choose an audience? Or rather, what was the need for him to choose and delegate this activity? And from this, what do we understand? We understand that Srila Mahaprabhu, he was an extraordinary manager as well, because he's Krishna. He has to have all kinds of qualities. He was a leader par excellence, and he was a manager. What did he do? He empowered those who were serving under him, his subordinates. He gave them power and allowed them to specialize and then speak on very, very powerful, intricate topics. By doing so, he actually elevated and glorified his devotees. So what do we understand from him? That it is said that ordinary leaders learn and are able to deliver great they're able to deliver great goods. In other words, they're able to execute very well. But great leaders make others. So Sri Mahaprabhu, by empowering Srila Haridas Thakur, and showed us that our job is to also facilitate the process of allowing others to excel and facilitating them by empowering them. And he showed principles of leadership. He chose Sri Haridas Thakur as he was the most significant leader in terms of chanting of the holy names, and he asked him questions. And these questions and these answers basically became what was known as Hari Nama Cintamani. There's a book, Hari Nama Cintamani, which was authored by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This dialogue is captured by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, entitled Hari Nama Cintamani. There have been several commentaries, and I am also using the commentary written by my spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He had written a commentary on the Hari Nama Cintamani, which was written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'm using that as a reference point as well. So to get around to the topic of Yuga, first we have to understand the significance of the Yuga, and then we will be talking about the intricacies of Dharma, which follows the Yuga. So let's understand the Yuga. See, amongst the Yugas, there are 4 Yugas. There's Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. And each of these Yugas have characteristics. And we use the word quality of time. The quality of time differs in each Yuga. The quality of time in Kali Yuga is very different from the quality of time in Treta Yuga versus Satya Yuga versus Dwapara Yuga. It's very different. Now, if we understand the word yuga, we also have to understand how dharma is propagated and what is the process. The fundamental process in Satya Yuga, for instance, or any yuga, is that there's an expectation of effort. There is an expectation of effort by the practitioner, and then there is compensation for what is lacking by the Lord and his special servants. So there is expectation of effort, and then there's compensation for whatever is lacking by the Lord and his special servants. This is a combination in every yuga. So if we were to go back to Satya Yuga, in Satya Yuga, there was 100% possibly dependence on the ability of the practitioner to move forward. In other words, there's very little spoken of about the availability of kripa or mercy in Satya Yuga. The yuga was designed in a manner where the practitioner had everything together. They had a wonderful, conducive environment. They had a physical and psycho mental ability which allowed them to facilitate very, very high quality sadhana. They were all sadhana siddhas in Satya Yuga. They could take up sadhana and they could reach perfection by the quality of sadhana which they offered to the Lord. So there was very little dialogue or very little information available, or rather speech about mercy available in Satya Yuga. There's very little speech about it. You always read about austerities. You read about the fact that the sadhakas in Satya Yuga could live up to 1,000 years plus. They could live for many thousands of years. So they could go on and live for many thousands of years and perform their sadhana. You could also read that varnashrama was in place. The facilities available to live was perfect. It was in alignment with what the Lord wanted. You could also read that the devotees themselves were very clear. They were very clear about their objectives. You could read that some devotees at the time of birth decided to just walk out of the house and then begin the sadhana. You read that at the age of 15, great princely personalities from royal households wanted to move on and take up sadhana for several thousands of years. So there seems to be a very conducive environment. There was the availability of knowledge. There was longevity. And as a consequence, the mercy component or the kripa component was practically missing. The devotee or the practitioner was expected to deliver almost everything. That was the Satya Yuga. And then you later on in Treta, in Dwapara, you see the balance shifting. You have a certain amount of expectation from the person in terms of what he or she is supposed to deliver, and then there's a certain amount which is being compensated by the Lord. It decreases. In other words, now the factor of kripa increases. The factor of mercy increases in Treta. The factor of mercy increases in Dwapara. Then finally in Kali, the practical ability of an individual to perform sadhana is gone. There really isn't any ability of an individual to perform sadhana. As a consequence, the entire component of success in spiritual pursuits is called kripa. So there are three types of sadhakas. The first is you have the nitya siddhas, the perfectionists who are eternally perfect. They have descended to assist others to go back. And then you have the practitioners who are sadhana siddhas. These are personalities whose abilities to perform sadhana are so great, and they have all the facilities. They have the longevity, they have the technology, they have the environment. Everything is conducive, and they are able to make it. You have the category of sadhana siddhas. And then the third category is the category of kripa siddhas. Now, the third category of kripa siddhas is what we have in Kali Yuga. Now, I'm not saying that the nitya siddhas or the eternally liberated souls do not visit. There's probably visitation, and there's probably a lot of mercy shared because of that. But at the same time, what we do see is that the norm is to come across people who are kripa siddhas. We are completely dependent. We are 100% dependent on the mercy of the Lord in this particular yuga. As a consequence, the dharma given in this yuga is also very different. The dharma given in this yuga is far, far more easier. There's only one. You do not have 10 things to do. There's only one thing to do, and that is the chanting of the holy names. There's just one activity which is being specified as dharma, and that is the chanting of the holy names. Nothing else is being specified as even being important. If you have to give up everything else, and if you have to hold on to one, chant. That's the focus of the Yoga Dharma. Now, Srila Prabhupada makes a very important statement in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, he makes several important statements. Practically every verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam and translation and the purports given by Srila Prabhupada are capable of delivering one to the lotus feet of Lord Sri Mahaprabhu. But there's one verse which focuses on the quality of kripa and the quality of what is required. And that is the 8th canto, 2nd chapter, 30th verse. The 8th canto, 2nd chapter, 30th verse, it's about the pastime of Gajendra. And in that, Srila Prabhupada's translation is as follows. Thereafter, because of being pulled into the water and fighting for many long years, the elephant became diminished in his mental, physical, and sensual strength. The crocodile, on the contrary, being an animal of the water, increased in enthusiasm, physical strength, and sensual power. Now, what does this verse mean? It's such a powerful verse which addresses the complicated environment that we are in. We have a very, very complicated environment that we operate in because of the means of livelihood and what we do for a living and how we exist. And what Srila Prabhupada is writing here is that this environment, because it is not conducive and because it is not designed for assisting those who are on the path of transcendence, rather it is designed for obfuscation, it is designed for confusion. He is saying that this environment would reduce our physical strength. Just as the elephant king Gajendra, he lost strength on a year-by-year basis as he was fighting the crocodile. Why did he lose it? He lost it. He lost it because he was not able to. He was in an environment where it was not conducive. It was the opposite of what he should be in. He was in water, while the crocodile was in land. I'm sorry, the crocodile was in water while the Gajendra was also in water, and the crocodile had the ability to gain strength because it was a natural environment. The elephant, on the other hand, was losing strength because it was an unnatural environment. So what is it that we have to learn from in this particular verse? In this verse, we are learning from Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, 2nd chapter, 30th verse. We are learning that year after year after year, being in an environment which is not designed for transcendence would weaken us. It's a fact of life. We will have to accept the fact that we're going to become weaker as years go by. We are not going to become stronger. As Kali strengthens, we are going to become weaker. Okay? It's a fact of life. So what is it which is required? It is required for us to accept this. That's number one. And to also expect that as long as we are able to follow the directions given by the Guru Parampara, there will be protection. In other words, whatever we do on the planet is completely dependent on the ability and the kripa given by the Guru Parampara. So what do we need to do? We just need to be able to keep our side of the contract. The environment is going to become tough. Our bodies are going to age. We are not going to be able to continue the same level of physical, mental, and other strength. It is not going to be easy. It's going to get tougher. So what are we dependent on? We are completely dependent on kripa. And this whole series of classes and the sharing that we're going to be doing is going to be based on how do we position ourselves to receive more mercy. So this is about what is it which we need to do for us to be able to receive mercy, to position ourselves for mercy. That's what this whole discussion is going to be about. Okay? So I have around 10 more minutes, but I just have several points to share. So that's what this is about. Now, one of the most important aspects of the Hari Nama Cintamani is that there were many things that one could learn from it, but one of the most important aspects was that we're learning that positioning ourselves for Kripa is the most important aspect of our being in this movement. We have to be able to position ourselves. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what that's all about. Okay, now we also hear from our acharyas that just 100 years back, during the time of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, during the time of the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, just when the Gaudiya Math was begun, the rule set in motion at that point was that we will have to chant 64 malas of the Mahamantra every day. That was his fundamental expectation. And it was also considered that if you do not chant 64 malas, you are considered fallen. Okay? But what is so surprising is that our Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, when he arrived in the United States and he observed the environment and he saw the complexity of Kali Yuga and he saw the nature of the struggle of just existing, he decided and he said, it is okay if it is 16 rounds. I've heard, I think there have been many mentions that initially he started out with 64, and then he went to 32, and then he said 16, nothing less than 16. He put his foot down, saying, no, it cannot be less than 16. So he said, chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regulative principles, and I will take care of the rest. Okay, this is Srila Prabhupada's promise. Years back, when just a week before my initiation, there was a seminar given in New Vrindavan by my Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Maharaj. And in that seminar, I had the very good fortune of being able to sit next to 2 very, very senior mothers of the movement. One was Mother Rukmini, and I do not remember the name of the other. And the part of the seminar was, we were supposed to share I think we were supposed to share realizations with our neighbors, who was sitting next to us. So the mother who was next to me was a Prabhupada disciple, very senior disciple. And she had joined the movement, I think it was 1968 or 67, I'm not sure, very early on. And she shared her experience. And she said that the whole movement was managed by Srila Prabhupada using mail, snail mail. People used to write letters. He used to reply. And he used to manage a worldwide movement using letters. He used to be extraordinarily careful in using Krishna's resources. Even making a phone call or even using stamps on letters, he was extraordinarily careful because he used to have such great respect and focus on Krishna's resources. So this Mataji, this mother, she had written to Srila Prabhupada saying, Srila Prabhupada, what is it which you want me to do for me to go back to Godhead? Right? She was very young, very enthusiastic, probably just been initiated because it was 1967, 68, very early on in the movement. So she wrote to Srila Prabhupada, and each reply from Srila Prabhupada used to take around 2 months, 2.5, sometimes 3 months, because he used to be traveling, but he always used to reply. And when the letters came back from Srila Prabhupada, people used to receive these letters with great enthusiasm. I mean, this was the biggest thing in their life. And I remember experiencing such joy, just waiting for my spiritual master to reply to my questions on my email. And I used to be checking my email practically 10 times the next day, waiting for him to reply. It was a natural thing. So you can imagine how excited people were when they wrote to Srila Prabhupada, waiting to see what his reply was. And then finally, one day, almost around 2 or 3 months later, the letter came from Srila Prabhupada, answering the question. And this mother was expecting an elaborate, maybe 2 or 3 page letter, or something pretty elaborate, sophisticated. And Srila Prabhupada surprised her. What did he do? He wrote 3 lines. He said, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regulative principles. I will take you back. This was a promise. This was a promise where Srila Prabhupada said, I will take you back. What does it mean? What is the lesson of that statement for us? It means that this is a contract. This is a contract where we are expected to do our part, and Srila Prabhupada will compensate, and Krishna, because it is Srila Prabhupada's promise, will make everything happen. We have no qualities. 16 rounds is not enough. Even if you're chanting pure names, it is not enough. The amount of opportunity for service, even if it was available, may not be adequate. We all have our other responsibilities. Our distractions are many. Okay? If you actually look at the entire complexity of our sadhana and our lifestyles and what is expected, one should understand that what we are asked to do is not on its own merit capable of taking us back. You have to understand that. You have to come to terms with the fact that yes, Srila Prabhupada is asking us to chant 16 rounds, but do you think 16 rounds is enough to take you back to Godhead? The answer is no. It is not. It is not enough. But because Srila Prabhupada is asking us to do it, Srila Prabhupada will compensate by his mercy and through the mercy of Krishna. If Srila Prabhupada makes a promise, Krishna will keep that promise. Mahaprabhu will keep that promise because Srila Prabhupada made that promise. That was the purport, or that was the understanding one needs to gain when you hear this from, when I came to hear it, this was the kind of realization that I had that, Srila Prabhupada is going to keep his promise. You also hear that this is not something which is adequate, right? So it's an extraordinary opportunity. One has to understand that this is an extraordinary opportunity and we are completely dependent on Kripa. We have no other quality other than the fact that we are connected to Srila Prabhupada. We have no other quality other than the fact that he has made this arrangement for us. And we have to keep our end of the contract. So these series of classes that I begin to share, that I'm going to begin to share, be it on the Bhagavad Gita, be it on Srimad Bhagavatam, be it on Hari Nama Cintamani, or Sikshashtakam prayers, or whatever the case may be, our focus is going to be simple, and the objective is going to be, how do we keep our side of the contract? If we do not keep our side of the contract, then it is simply not going to work. How does it work? How does it not work? It is very simple. In one sense, if you look at this whole arrangement, it's a very simple arrangement for us to be able to surrender to Krishna consciousness. It's very simple. All we have to do is follow what Srila Prabhupada has asked us to do, right? In one sense, just look at it. Just close your eyes for a moment. Go about looking at what the expectation is. The expectation is that you simply have to chant 16 rounds. And after chanting 16 rounds, you have to offer service as you're motivated, and you have to follow the 4 regulative principles. The 4 regulative principles in themselves are not the objective of this movement. The 4 regulative principles merely bring us to a platform that allows us to chant. Okay? So in one sense, it's very simple. There's nothing else which is being asked for. This is not a 1,000-year program. This is not asking us to go and live in isolation. This is not asking us to reject the whole world and go away. This is a simple request of 16 rounds. But then why is it that we find it so difficult to meet this fundamental and simple request, which is going to grant us a position in the eternal sky and even at the topmost planet of the eternal sky? Why is it? You just have to reflect on the fact that it is so simple to follow in one sense. Why is it that it is so complicated for us to even do it? And this can be understood by our nature. You see, we have been a part of material nature for millions of lifetimes. We have been pretending. We have been pretending to be a part of this material nature. Why am I saying pretense? It's because we don't belong here. We don't really belong here. So we have been practicing in this alien environment, and we've been here for so long that we have actually gotten used to believing that Krishna doesn't exist. We have actually gotten used to believing that this is life. We have actually gotten used to accepting the norm. It is like a prisoner who gets used to prison life because he has spent 20 years in prison. He does not want to come out because he cannot survive. He is used to the prison life, and this is our state. A beautiful example, which was given by my spiritual master when I was reading his book, was that of a child. The parents of a child make an offer to the child. They say that you come home, you do your homework, and then you wash dishes. In the sense, you help in the kitchen. You do this for 8 weeks. And at the end of 8 weeks, we will present you with a beautiful bike, a brand new bike. This is the contract made by the parents with the child. Now, how simple is the side of what the child is supposed to do? The child is supposed to simply focus on coming home, doing its homework, and then doing dishes. Very simple. And then at the end of the contract, 8 weeks, the child receives a reward. But what happens? The child is a cheat for most part. The child, while washing dishes the first day, while washing dishes for the first day, what does it do? It is contemplating that my friends are playing outside, I should be playing too. And here I am washing dishes. The child, after a couple of weeks of doing it, starts thinking that why should I do this? Should I possibly hide the dishes under the sofa, under the couch, and step out and play with my friends? Okay? And all kinds of deviant thought processes come into the child's head, where the child finds one excuse after another, trying to move away from just fulfilling its side of the contract. Does this remind you of who we are? We pick up the bead bags. We know we have to get up. We know it's easier to chant in the morning, but yet we don't go to bed at time. Okay? We know that we are supposed to chant 16 rounds. For many, many days, we miss it. Why? Some people have this habit of writing down, thinking that they're going to compensate the next day. What if there's no next day? What's the guarantee that there's going to be a next day, a next year, next month, where you're going to come back and you're going to be allowed to compensate for what has been missed already? Okay? And what other excuses do we have? Some of us think that watching some TV show is much better, not knowing that the TV show is going to obfuscate our ability to chant. We do it, even though we know that it's harmful, we do it. Even though we know that subjecting ourselves to a lot of exposure to material phenomena is not going to help us in our chanting, we subject ourselves. We make all kinds of arrangements. We don't ask the right questions. Why do we do it? Because we are trained to move away from Krishna. None of us really know and want bhakti. If we really do, we would be putting in all the effort we need to put in. Okay? This is the real issue. So we are like the child who is just running away, trying to escape, trying to think, why don't I cheat? Why don't I put the dishes under the couch? Maybe my parents wouldn't notice. Simple thing, simple contract. Why isn't it being fulfilled? Why is it so difficult for us to do so? That's going to be the focus of all future sessions. Okay, every one of us faces challenges. So I face challenges, and the idea is that by my wanting to share and also hear your challenges and wanting to try and see if I can assist you, I would be able to remedy my challenges as well. In other words, we are just going to try and help ourselves. And the idea was that if I were to focus on the chanting of the holy names in the night before you go to bed, then there's a fair chance that you will wake up and I will wake up enthused of wanting to do our side of the contract so that Srila Prabhupada can do his. It's a promise from him. It is a promise from Mahaprabhu. It will be fulfilled on their side. All we have to do is keep our side of the contract. This is purely going to be about that. I'm going to stop my sharing now, even though I had a few more things to share, but I don't want to take up time because it is, it is 9:35. I was wanting to share for half hour, not more. And I also want to respect the fact that if my classes are not going to allow you to wake up, then you start telling me that, I'm surely not on the side of wanting to help you. So I want to stop here. Maybe on Thursday, we will go into a few aspects of, who Haridas Thakur was, and what was his quality, what was his nature, And what is it which allowed Mahaprabhu to choose him as Nama Acarya? Incredible choice, incredible. Can you imagine the strategy? 500 years back, the strategy for spreading the holy names across the globe was made, and the choice was made. They chose someone who would normally not be chosen to represent the Yuga Dharma, based on his religion, or based on his religion of birth, based on his community, based on the different karmic circumstances. Mahaprabhu made such a strategic choice, and he facilitated it. And Srila Prabhupada spread the movement worldwide. Srila Prabhupada's advent was mentioned by Mahaprabhu. According to Lochan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Mangal, Mahaprabhu makes a statement saying that I would be spreading this movement in Bharatvarsha, and then my Senapati Bhakta, who is the commander, he would come and he would spread it worldwide. No one knew who that was until Srila Prabhupada accomplished his task. There was a lot of speculation, but Srila Prabhupada accomplished the task, and everybody knew that that was who Mahaprabhu was talking about. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to see if there are any questions that I can take, and then we will continue further on Thursday. Are you able to see the chat window? I guess whoever is here is able to. Any questions? I'm not sure as to how the chat window works. I have set up a Q&A window, and I'm able to see a few statements here, but okay, so there's someone who is messaging me saying they cannot see the chat window on the Q&A page. So perhaps I can just set it up. Can you see it now? Can you see it? Okay, I'm seeing a couple of questions. I think it was from Punachanda Prabhu. What is the best way to remind ourselves about the contract again and again? The best way to remind ourselves about the contract again and again is to put the contract as the main objective of the day. Revolve your life around being able to keep this commitment. Revolve your life around this, because nothing else matters. This was how Srila Prabhupada led life. This was exactly how Srila Prabhupada led life. He put the commitments given to his spiritual master right in the center, and he started building his life around that commitment. What we need to do is to do exactly that. We need to be able to build our life around this commitment. What time do we eat? What do we eat? In other words, the eating, sleeping, in some cases mating and defending, has to be built around our ability to keep our end of the contract alive. It's a very simple thing. How many of you do not respond to an email or a phone call from your boss? I'm not expecting an answer. I know that. I know that every one of you, if you're at least serious about what you are, and if you know the consequences, you will respond to your boss immediately. Why is it so? It is so because you recognize the consequences. Why is it that we are unable to recognize the consequences of keeping our side of the contract? It's very simple. It's because we do not take it seriously. Okay? So that's the answer. Put the contract right in the middle. Put it in writing. Stick it on the wall when you brush your teeth in the night and when you go back again in the morning to brush your teeth before chanting. Put it on the wall in the bathroom. Put it on the mirror. Okay? Put it on the wall in your bedroom, wherever you are. Put the contract down there, saying that this is your commitment to your spiritual master, this is your commitment to Srila Prabhupada, and this commitment is far more important than anything else because this is a permanent solution to all kinds of challenges. If you chant well, and if you follow the instructions of Guru, everything else will simply fall in place. Okay? Let me take other questions. Now, the other, I think, was that Sandeep, you had one more question. We're getting, sometimes we feel that Harinam is not purifying us. Okay. Sometimes we feel that Harinam is not purifying us. You got to realize that you are climbing a large cliff. That's what this is. Krishna consciousness is like climbing a cliff. And when you climb a cliff in mountaineering, you will reach a plateau sometimes. And then you sit on the plateau and you contemplate, you catch your breath, okay? And then you go on and keep climbing again. So the point which we want to make here is that at every time, you will have to bring a higher level of intensity. You have to bring a higher level of intensity. Your chanting and your following the process will bring you to a certain plateau or a certain height. Once you reach that height, you will have to reconfigure. You got to focus again and say, okay, I've reached this position. I want to move further. If I have to move further, this is what I've done for the past year. If I've done this for the past year, why do you expect that the same results would come in if you're going to continue whatever you did the previous year? What is required? Is required that there's going to be an increased level of intensity. If you are an assistant manager and you're going to get promoted to being a manager, then being a manager would require that even as an assistant manager, you function as a manager. So you need to increase your intensity for you to get promoted, right? You need to get intensity for you to get promoted. It's very simple. You need to be a manager. So similarly, you constantly work on yourself to increase your intensity. You increase your intensity in reading, you increase your intensity in chanting, you increase your intensity in Sangha and service. You constantly focus on all of that. If you're not going to upgrade yourself on a year-by-year basis, you would be on a plateau. And being on a plateau for many, many years, one day you will find that it is not enthusing you and you will stop. Remember that Krishna consciousness, you are constantly moving. That's why we are calling it a movement. You're not going to be static in a movement. You're going to be constantly moving. So if you're going to be constantly moving, it means you evaluate, you reevaluate, you take into account what your position is. You constantly do what you did the previous year and you expect new results to come the next year. It will not happen. Okay? So the answer is you have to increase intensity for you to constantly move forward. Okay, now Ajay Govind Prabhu is, I'm sorry, there are many questions. Thank you so much. We hear it's in time to get up early and do rounds. How do we cultivate this? You cultivate this. It is said that if you follow anything for 21 days strictly, it would allow you to continue for a longer period of time. So in that regard, perhaps what you need to do is to keep targets. If you're waking up at 5 o'clock and you want to upgrade yourself to 4, increase your waking up time by 15 minutes this week. And if that works, continue that for a month. Then increase by another 15 minutes. For you to be able to wake up, you need to be able to sleep. Ensure that you go to bed at a certain time. Ensure that you cut out all kinds of activity which can preoccupy you by 6 o'clock in the evening and start focusing on the next morning. Because remember, this is sadhana, which essentially means that for you to work on yourself in the morning, you have to work on yourself the previous evening. You cannot just climb out of bed and expect to be fully functional if you've not thought about it, if you've not meditated on it, if you've not planned it the previous evening. Okay? So it is required that you focus on the problem. The problem is getting up, focus on it. Start thinking about eating early, start thinking about resting early, start thinking about shutting down all kinds of extraordinary activity much early on in the day. Okay? And then, how can I get rid of my bad habits? Okay, it's anonymous, I guess, that's better. How can I get rid of my bad habits? I find these a big hindrance in my sadhana. Right. So the bad habits are a part of anarthas. Sriman Mahaprabhu, when basically when he was cleaning up the Gundicha Mandir in Jagannath Puri, it is said that the whole process was he took out the big obstacles, the big boulders, and then he started working on the smaller obstacles, which is the smaller, finer aspects of dirt in the Gundicha Mandir before Jagannath was to come back. And then he started working on even finer aspects. And then he started working on, cleaning the extraordinarily fine aspects which are not visible in the naked eye. He started pouring water and, kind of cleaning it up. So how do we clean the bad habits? By first recognizing that your bad habit is not your owner. You really are not being held captive by your bad habit. You should first recognize that. Okay, right now, if you have a habit which is holding you captive, you have to take the position of strength. Okay, and you also have to take the position of being able to gradually want to kick it. You just have to kick the habit. How do you do it? You do it by increasing your involvement in that area. So if you have a habit of eating things which are not supposed to be eaten, increase prasadam and stick to prasadam. If you have a habit of hearing and watching and getting stimulated by nonsense, which is not really related to or helping you in any manner, but in fact is working against you, cut it down and replace it with something which is connected to whatever is conducive. Our whole idea is param drishtva nivartate, where we constantly work on replacing what is not working with what is working. And this evaluation and this taking of inventory has to happen every day. You have to constantly work on yourself. This is like a two-way street. As I said, if you have to position yourself for Kripa, you really have to do your part. And one of the parts that we have to do is to monitor ourselves, take inventory, and say that this is not working. Kick it out. If you don't want to kick it out, replace it with something better, which is more conducive. That is what you need to do. These big bad habits, you really have to kick them out because they're not going to help you in life or in chanting. If there are big ones, I don't want to go about saying that. If you're going to be regulative principles, if you're breaking them, stop it, because that's not going to help you in life either. Okay. Now a question which I missed. How do we remain strong in our chanting, sadhana, while living in an environment that is designed to weaken us spiritually, agitate mentally? How do we ignore or not influence by subtle influences coming through media and other persons? Okay, most important thing is that there are prayers. You have to develop the habit of being able to access higher levels of protection through prayers. You have to get in touch with the prayers of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, get in touch with the prayers of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, beg for mercy from these personalities, and then begin reading these prayers with their help. And these prayers in general are protective. They protect us from the influences of the environment. They offer us solace. They offer us strength. They allow us to be able to get back on track. Okay, that is the first step. Okay, if there are going to be serious obstacles in the environment, then probably you need to evaluate the environment and the suitability of the environment for your Krishna consciousness. You need to take the step. You need to be able to see if this particular environment, whatever I am in, is this conducive? Is it helping me? And if it is not helping me, which aspect of it is helping me and which is not? Okay? We should not simply reject an environment either. We should be very careful, because in the material world, it is like saying that, I'm not going to be here because some other place is going to work out. That's not going to happen, because every place is more or less the same. So you have to really evaluate what is working, what is not working. And then if there are serious hindrances which are very obvious, then you need to evaluate a decision on being able to move on. You need to be able to see if there's a serious situation which requires remedy, which requires a shift, then maybe an environmental change is required. Okay, in most cases, the problem is with us. It is not with the environment in most cases, right? So, and we certainly, what is going to help is for us to get prepared to handle the environment as opposed to running away from it. So that's something which you should evaluate it. Evaluate it, take steps, and if it's really a problem, then you would have to give consideration to seeing if the change of the environment would help. Because some people, for instance, they could be healthier in a climate which is more conducive. They may not be healthy in a cold climate. They may become dysfunctional. They may probably be able to fit in more in a climate which is better. Okay, I'm just giving you a very simplistic example, simplistic scenario. Or in some cases, they could have probably been used to an environment which is more in the mode of goodness. Okay, in some cases, they are probably used to the mode of passion, and they have been put in the mode of goodness, and they can't take it. Trust me, that is also a problem with many devotees. If they move into a farm thinking that they can go to Mayapur. Mayapur is actually quite busy these days, but Mayapur, Vrindavan, wherever it may be, or they can move into a farm, they have a surprise coming, because moving into a farm means that you're going to be in an extraordinarily sattvic environment. And it may just be that you are not able to fit into a sattvic environment because your own personality is such that you need more rajas in the environment. Okay, that could become a disaster for those who are more associated with that. This is exactly what Srila Prabhupada was talking about in the 8th canto, 2nd chapter, 30th verse. He was talking about the fact that one should choose the varna and the ashrama very carefully. Okay, if you choose the varna and the ashrama very carefully, if you choose the professional aspect of your life very carefully, then you would have strength. He writes very clearly that leaders and people in our movement should be able to have physical and sensual strength for them to be able to handle the environment. We do not want to become weak. So he says, be very careful in choosing what you do. If you're going to be in an environment where each day you go to work or you come back from work and you're going to come back weaker, evaluate it. Evaluate it. It is just something which you need to take account of and evaluate. Sometimes a little mental adjustment from us can help us. Sometimes there could be more that is required. So one needs to come into that mode where you want to really be taking inventory. That's the point we want to make. Take inventory constantly of your situation. Personal situation, environmental situation, both. Sometimes the karma which we face could be intense. Sometimes the environment could be intense. Okay? Sometimes we may be able to cope and sometimes we may not be able to cope. So it does not make sense that if you constantly put yourself in a situation which you cannot cope, and sooner or later you're going to be weak, and that particular day the environment will get us. So we have to be careful. But it also means that if you know that there's some danger, don't go for it. Don't spend time exposing yourself to mundane phenomena. Devotees have a certain tendency. They think that some things don't harm them. They think that, spending time reading news and the internet, going around and hearing about this and hearing about that doesn't harm them. The fact is that if you get used to it, you're going to constantly do it. It's a distraction. It may not seem harmful, but you are more in touch with material nature than you should be. How many times did you read news? I've seen people reading news constantly through the day. Keep browsing. It doesn't help because you're going to be bombarded with data. You're going to be bombarded with data which you cannot process. So there's no point. the point which you want to make here is that understand that you have a responsibility as well. There are certain things and which you have chosen, which you cannot help, and there are certain things that you can help. You should focus on the aspects that you should be able to fix. Let me see if there are any more questions. And again, I stopped at 9:30. If you want to get off the call, you can. I just want to make sure that I can answer a few questions before I go today. Is there anything else? I think the last question I answered was Mother Vilas Manjari. So that was it. Okay, so thank you very much. And there's this little technique that you can use, that you offer prayers to Prabhupada and to your spiritual master, requesting them to provide mercy to you so that you're able to wake up. Keep a time and keep that as your focus. Chant, and just chant when you lie down on the bed. I can share a few things more, I think, which will help today in terms of waking up. It is said that if you lie on the left side of your body, put pressure on the left side of your body, you will fall asleep quite easily. The best way to do so is to lie on the left side of your body and chant the Hari Nam. You will fall asleep, you will be surcharged, and you will wake up to be able to chant nicely. Okay, that's a technique that you can use. I have tried it, it works. I don't know. Maybe you should also try it. There's someone who is asking a question about the news. Who is that? I do not know. And what's the... How to stop the urges of going to the news links? Well, the urges have to be stopped, which is the point. You have to make it a point to understand that it is not helping you. If it is really a problem, I'm not saying that it is, but then getting too preoccupied with things that concern with this world is wrong. It is not going to help. It is one thing for you to know what is happening. I don't say that it's bad. One needs to know what is happening in the world. It is another for us to get so preoccupied with aspects of our existence that it becomes a strain on us. We meditate, we go to bed, we wake up, and we think about the same thing. It is one thing as teenagers, where we think about, the cricket team and how the cricket team did, how, the soccer team did, and whatever did, baseball, whatever your passion was, right? But it is another if we continue being that even when we grow up. So the best way to do it is to understand that I'm going to restrict myself, I'm going to read, I'm going to get off. That's it. Okay, if I have information, good. So the best way to understand it is Srila Rupa Goswami summarized it. He says, accept everything that is favorable for Krishna consciousness, reject everything that is unfavorable. Very simple. So you kind of put it through a filter and accept and reject. All right, I think I'm going to stop, and hopefully this was helpful. And next week, not next week, on Thursday evening, we'll meet again, and we'll go further into Sri Hari Nama Cintamani. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.